Hey guys, today I want to show you the simple transitions I just implemented in the game today. Before we go into the code, let's have a look at what they look like. I set up a button here where I can just press it and it'll start the transition. It will transition from this screen, the game screen, to the game screen. So I'm pressing it now. There we go. It's just a simple fading transition for now. But the system does support some more interesting transitions, as we will see as I will implement them. But for now, it's just a simple fade transition. Oh, I should show you this too. Let's try it again here. Right when the transition is in the middle of transitioning, it will print out transition, and we'll see that why when we'll find out why when we go into the code here. Great, this is going great. Here inside the update method in the game screen, we find this debug block that says if I press F9, this line runs right here. It's a long line of code. Okay. Great. So we get the app. That's the main Pokemon game class, and then we say start transition. So it's a method that's very high in the hierarchy. This is the from screen. This is the to screen. So it's just this screen both times, and then we'll give it a transition. This is just a simple fading transition, and then an action. And this is just a really simple interface that I can implement when I call the line, and it just says transition. So we can see that it works. This is usable for when for instance we want to go from one map to the next map, because that's also this transition from one screen to the same screen, but then we want to execute some loading, but we want to do it right in the middle of the transition, and that's what this allows us to do. So in here we can specify in a loading, so it isn't viewing, so you can't see the screen decomposing while it fades out. Great. Alright, so this is the start transition method in the Pokemon game class. Let's go into it, see what it does. It will just go to the transition screen and start the transition. This transition screen here is just a screen just like any other that just handles these transitions. So let's go into that method. This takes the same parameters as the one in the Pokemon game class, and it just copies it to the class, and then we say this transition screen is now in the state of transitioning out, and then we make this screen the active screen in libgdx. Great. So what happens when this is the active screen? We update. If the state is out, then we update an out transition, which is just a transition class. We'll get to that in a moment. And then if the out transition is finished, then we do the action and set the state to state in. State in is the exact same thing, updates the transition, and if it's finished, then we set the screen to the to screen we specified when we called the start transition method. Great. So these transitions. No, wait. Let's take the render method first here. If we're transitioning out, then we render the from screen with the render method, not the update. I specifically made render and update two different methods. It's not usually in libgdx, but I made it that way in this game so that I can render this screen without progressing its logic. You can decide if you want to do something similar, but I didn't want the screen to be progressing while it's fading in or fading out. I didn't want things to start happening to the screen it's fading into before the transition is completely over and the player is ready to give input to the screen. Great. So since my screens use viewport, I have to make a specific viewport for this transition screen as well. So we're just applying that and then rendering the transition. Great. And if we are transitioning in, we render the screen it's transitioning to first, and then apply a viewport and render our in transition over it. Great. So what is in these transitions? What constitutes a transition? Great. So I have this abstract superclass. Wait, let me just get this. Great. Called transition, where you specify a duration and then the asset manager you want to use. It updates, it has a timer that it updates, and if the timer is over the duration, then it's finished, and it will specify it being finished. We can also get the progression with a float from 0 to 1 if we want to use that, and then we implement this transition. So I have these, I have a fade in transition that has a color, specifies which color it fades into, and a duration, and then the asset manager. Great. We just load a white texture from the asset manager. I have one in status effects here. This is the white image. And then when we render this transition, we get a badge, by the way, in our render method here, so that the transition screen can have its own badge. We begin the batch, and then we set the color to the color specified, and then the alpha determines how far we are. Since this is a fade-in transition, it has to go from 1 to 0 in the alpha. So this is the only difference between fade-in and fade-out is that that detail with the progress there, and then it just draws over the entire screen, and we end it, and then that's completely fine. We get this nice result. Now if I wanted a different effect, I could just subclass this transition again and specify how I want to render compared to the progress the transition is making in its duration. Yeah, really simple stuff, but it makes it nice and easy to have these transitions that also shows part of the screens that it's transitioning from and transitioning to. There are some things you can't do though with this. You can't show both screens at the same time. So if you want a sliding animation or something, this system just won't do. But it will do all I needed to. So that's, I think, that's fine. Yeah, maybe I should show you what I did for the render update method here, since libgdx doesn't do updating normally, it just does render. Great, so here in the topmost, the game class of the Pokemon game here, I now have an update block and a rendering block. The rendering block is called render in the active screen with the delta time. And the update is where it gets fun, since everyone gets render normally anyway. First update the tween manager, so all the animations don't stop, and then the it asks if the currently active screen is an abstract screen, which is my abstract screen class, where it has access to the Pokemon game, and yeah, it has access to the Pokemon game. Great, so that's a class in my game, the abstract screen. And then if it is a class of abstract screen, then that means it has this update method that we then call. If it's not though, that's completely fine, so I can use both normal screens and abstract screens, but you know, I can only transition nicely into an abstract screen. Alright, so that's it. Whoop, fading transitions. I don't have any other maps, so I can't show you a nicer transition. Maybe I can though if I transition into the battle screen. Just get the battle screen from the Pokemon game there and transition into that. Maybe don't do anything as you do it. And then here we go. That's the battle system loading up. Maybe you noticed there are some the slowpoke here, for instance, only popped in once the fading was finished, that is a problem with the battle screen here. It isn't set up nicely. As you go into it, it sets it up once it starts updating. So yeah, but that's transitions. I thank you for watching.